morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Alero Edu and this is Sunrise.
I'm Ayamakide. Good morning and welcome. Hope you've had your cup of cocoa or cocoa or cocoa. Oh, Christ. How in the universe would everyone think that up? Cocoa.
That's what we call it.
Or cocoa.
No, that's cocoyam.
Yes, I know.
That's cocoyam.
Yeah. So
which I don't see readily anymore.
Well, you're not in the village.
Do people still eat cocoyam?
There are people and they're in the village, so it's like saying there's no guinea fowl anymore.
Guinea fowl is very much there.
Exactly. So you don't see it all the time, but
it's very much there.
Not the eggs. Okay.
Well, okay. Good night, Queen Elizabeth II. It's like, I mean, she was there, and she was there, and she was there. All through our lives, and suddenly she's gone.
You know, 70 years, the length, plus 214 days, by the way. That's almost 80, as far as I'm concerned. The length of time she used on the throne alone is the length of time for a good number of people in this generation. I think that's about the average lifespan today. You know, and she reigned for that long. Born 1926 and reigned 70 years. So she started reigning at what?
26, actually, yeah. Her father died when she was 25, and she was crowned when she was 26.
Interesting. Born 1926, started reigning 26 years after. Okay, that did not come to me until now. Anyway, so you know it's iconic.
It is. It is
very iconic. Now here is a system you've gotten used to so many years. So many years. Now you have to begin to rethink so many things.
She saw how many prime ministers? She saw how many American presidents come and go?
So it's
whoa, she was blessed. She was blessed.
Yeah, I mean, and then, you know, I saw a tweet by one of these comedians. Said, of all the things that are going to change post Queen Elizabeth's passing is the fact that the currencies have to change.
Of course.
That one baffles him.
Why should it baffle him?
Do you know the cost that's going to incur? Print
matter.
New pound bills, print
postage stamps, coins, yes, yes, and not just in England.
Wow.
Commonwealth countries, because they all have the Queen's bust on their currencies as well.
Wow. Now that's an economy right there.
Right there.
I'm just thinking, well, all the blacksmiths and goldsmiths and all those people that are going to make money this time around.
Well, fortunately, they're not like us who would just say, okay, well, we're drawing this currency in 3 weeks' time, so you got to go to the bank and change it.
That's one. Two, and I think it was one of my colleagues, you know, on Sunrise Day that said, look, if you have any pounds stuck somewhere,
you better go and dig all of them out now and find how you're going to get them to the UK.
Especially those ones you hid in, where's that place they usually hid? Soccerways and stuff like that. Yeah, I said it.
It's rich people who hide money in soccerways.
They hide it, period. And they live with it.
That's for rich folk.
You know, so that's on the one hand. On the other hand, of course, is good morning, King Charles III.
Good morning, King Charles.
And at 11 o'clock this morning, we're going to have an announcement made. Preparations are already ongoing to make the announcement that, okay, it's now official. The king is the king of the United Kingdom.
Somebody tweeted yesterday, finally, a 73-year-old man gets a job.
He had jobs. Come on.
Well, this is the job that he was born to do.
Well, he had other... He was an IT student.
He was the heir for 73 years.
That's an office.
In fact, many were beginning to wonder if the woman might even outlive her son.
Whoa.
Many thought maybe he would never get to be king, that he just might die before his mother.
Just on the side, I saw a video yesterday posted. I've not even taken a second look, of a family of 12.
Ah.
You saw it?
Yes.
The oldest, 113.
The youngest?
The youngest, 90. They are all still alive.
12 of them.
Jesus.
All 12 of them.
Wow. May their lives live long. How am I going to say that? So
that is, if ever there was longevity, that's it right there.
I mean, yeah.
That's it.
All 12 siblings alive. That's amazing.
Yes. And I want to talk about a video that went viral. I think it was last week, actually. An interview that Oprah conducted with Mrs. Obama, where she said, well, living in the White House, yes, it's free to live there, but you pay for everything else, you know. Says even if you have visitors and you serve them peanuts, they're going to count all the peanuts in the little dish, and they're going to give them the bill at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about our own government houses. So those of you who are used to going to hobble with governors and all that, very soon, if the governors are asked to pay for what you eat, they won't be so readily be opening their doors to you, you know.
Perhaps especially for states that they say they don't have much money. For instance, I mean,
not just the states.
Just do this yourself, right? Do a simple Google search. What did I Google? Aso Rock budget for food. So you can Google Delta State's budget for food, or Kaduna State budget for food, or Zamfara State budget for food. What you will find might inspire you.
Aso Rock, for 1 year, it was 644 million.
Yes, that's budget for this year. No. 644.3 million. That three.
You had to put the point 3.
Yes, that 0.3 is significant. In fact, you know, in 2013, President Jonathan at the time said he had to reduce the bill, the food bill, by 494 million. He reduced it by.
So how much was it? $1 billion?
He reduced it by 494 million. He reduced that. That's a reduction.
Yeah, but look. The point of bringing all this up is America is supposed to be a rich nation, and yet the president pays for his food.
In the official residence.
In the president's official residence. We say that we are broke right now. Well, we've been talking about this being broke for some months, but we're not seeing any things that governments are doing to reduce spending.
I think it's really up to us as a people to put pressure where it is necessary. But then it's also a culture that we have as a people.
There you go again, the office of the citizen.
Thank you. It's a whatever it is in our own heads as well. You know, I mean, I can just imagine someone saying in the UK, my father is now the king, or now the king's son is my personal friend, and all those things, and I'm gonna get a monument of his office. It's gonna cost him. Okay, we're gonna go to the menu now. Menu again? No, not that menu. This
not
menu.
Food.
Not food.
No.
Menu for
that line. Crude oil theft. That's the first one we're going to be talking about this morning.
That's been a long time coming. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. Then the building collapse menace is something else that's been in the news for a bit, something we want to take advantage of and talk about.
United Nations Education Attack Day. That should make very interesting listening.
It has to make very interesting listening. And then what's the plight of military veterans? Something to also talk about as well.
And then we'll be looking at our lifestyle segment. And what are we talking about today?
Food health. You know, Socrates, was it Socrates that was attributed to have said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food.
Okay, so you are what you eat.
So they say. And the artist of the week today is
It's a he.
It's a he.
It's a he.
It is a he.
A he who are Japa.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Japad.
Yeah, Japad, yes. the verb to jakpa. So the past tense of jakpa is jakpad.
I see. Me to go to school. This is a part of education as well. We'll be right back.
Thank you for joining us this beautiful Saturday morning. Members of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, we all call them Pengasan, this week threatened to shut down oil production in Nigeria for 30 days.
Wow.
30 entire days if the federal government fails to curb the lingering massive oil theft in the Niger Delta. The union members staged protests in various parts of Nigeria, including Abuja, Warri in Delta State, Kaduna, and Port Harcourt in Rivers State. We all know what will follow, of course, oil being our major foreign exchange revenue earner. Now, we will engage Pengasan this morning and find out exactly what is pushing them to take this kind of decision. It's our pleasure to welcome Comrade Osifo Festus, who's president of Pengasan. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Alero.
Thank you for joining us. 30 days entirely? Why would you do a thing like that to this nation?
Alero, for us, you know, we are senior staff association in the Nigeria oil and gas industry. So our preference has never been strike. Our preference has never been to shut down tools. Our preference has always been constructive dialogue. That is why in the last 1 year, what we've done invariably was how to engage government. So we have been engaging government in the last 1 year. We have engaged all the stakeholders. We have engaged, from the regulators to the operators in the industry to security agencies. We have engaged them on how to curb this menace of oil theft. Because for us, our members cannot continuously labor in vain. Because on a daily basis, we go into the creeks, we go into oil production facilities in all different parts of the country, most especially the Niger Delta, to get oil produced. So we cannot keep producing oil and pumping them into pipelines. And at the end of the day, majority of the oil are stolen. Then it has gotten to a point where employers of labor and the producers in the sector in some areas cannot meet the salary obligations because as of today, productions are shutting naturally. A lot of companies operating in the land areas, they have shut in their production. OML 58, for example, operated by Total E&P, has been shut down for a very long time. As of today, after a while, what they now did was that they now felt that, okay, instead of us shutting down completely, because the well is a well that produces gas at the same time. So instead of us shutting down completely, what they now did was that they produce the oil, they now re-inject the oil back into the well, but they now export the gas. Then you have ADAX, the same thing, OML 124. They've shut it down because producing and pumping into the pipeline, everything goes. You have same problem with AGIP, then you have a bigger problem as well with MPDC. Most of their production today, the oil they produce are being stolen. So why do we keep producing and at the end of the day, you have some miscreants out there that steal this? So we have engaged government in the last 1 year extensively on this, on the best way forward. We have made several recommendations on what we think could be done, both at the short and at the long run. But they are foot dragging to implement some of these things and they are foot dragging to get them done. So for us, it's out of national interest because Pengasan, we are a very patriotic institution. So we came out and said, no, enough is enough. We've had a lot of engagement behind closed door, but at this point in time, we needed our voice to be heard. So that was why we held our rallies across our major operational areas. And that is why, again, we said we are going to further engage government. If there is no appreciable progress, then our members will be withdrawn. Because as of today, Alero, do you know that a lot of our members are being threatened in some of those locations where the operators decide to short production? Some of these people, they will place a call to our members threatening them that they should resume production, otherwise they will come and blow up the entire plant because they want to steal the crude. So it's a fundamental problem that all well-meaning Nigerians must close ranks and must come together to address.
Mr. Sifo, crude oil is not something you can steal and put in your pocket. Oil exploration is very technical. So special equipment is required. So those who are involved in this thing, it must be a very organized, syndicated, body or whatever you want to call them. It's not Alero just going there with a bowl or something and scooping oil. So, I mean, you must have information regarding those who are doing this.
Yes, Alero, you are very correct. Crude oil production is a very complex business. Pumping this crude oil into the pipeline from the production facilities to the terminals, it also requires a lot of expertise. In fact, when you pump crude oil into pipeline, you have several PSIs of pressure that are applied to that pipeline because the crude moves due to pressure differentials. So the pressures, are quite high. So if you have a novice that go close to that pipeline to tap that pipeline, at the end of the day, you are going to have explosion. The person is going to die. So for you to be able to tap this pipeline, for you to be able to get this done professionally, then you must have good equipment, which you have said. But as of today, we have realized that there is a total collusion going on in the Niger Delta. That collusion cut across all stakeholders in the industry, cut across several strata of Nigerians. It includes the security agencies you send to that particular area to man those pipelines. It includes people from the host communities. It includes people that are not from the host communities. They have international collaborators. They have some people that are even working in the oil and gas companies or may have even retired. So it's a big business going on. But again, people could plan to perpetrate crime. But what we are saying is that the government must develop the will to be able to solve the problem. Because today, we have no business in borrowing money from international financiers and even crowding local banks. Because as of today, in the last 7-8 months, crude oil has been selling for above $100 per barrel. This is the first time that that crude oil is selling at this such high price, and we are running everywhere to look for money. We are running deficit budgeting to that humongous level. So the government should first of all sit up, knowing that their revenue is going down, knowing that, there are a lot of crises, both macro and microeconomic crises that we are facing today as a nation. Then, beyond the government, today, a lot of investors are shying away from coming to invest in the Nigeria oil and gas business. Outside the issues bordering on energy transition and the finances of fossil fuel, but they still go to other areas to do such investment. Our environment today is becoming a bit toxic. Our environment today, they are driving away investors. And even those that are here already, it is difficult for them to invest in capital projects, most especially in our onshore operations. So as you have said, it's a cartel.
Well,
it is a total conspiracy across board.
Mr. Sifo, comrade, just 1 second. So one of the issues that you have raised, I'm just wondering, you said it's a cartel of sorts, very, very organized. Is there any way that some members of your organization have also been indicted in this cartel?
None to our knowledge as at today. But as you know, we are not security agencies, so we may not know. In every organization, you may have one or two persons that could be involved in one or two infractions. So I cannot stand here to say Pengasan members that are over 30, 40,000 spread across the nook and crannies of Nigeria, that they are all sent. I cannot stay here to say that. But what I could say is that as of today, there is no member of Pengasan that has been indicted. There is no member of Pengasan that the law enforcement agencies have brought forth to say that they are part of those colluding. But that does not exonerate anybody.
Now,
so for us,
I'm glad you said that. I mean,
we are holier than thou.
That's just to put that on the table. Just
if any member,
that's just to put that out there. I mean, so that people will not say, okay, well, maybe some of their members, at least it is something that is well known. But the point that one of the other points that I want to raise is that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and he is also Minister of Petroleum. Are these information unknown to him, as well as the Minister of State for Petroleum? Do you think they are unaware that some of the people you have indicted in your statements and at your press conference, do you think they are not aware of these things?
If you listen to the group CEO of NNPC about 2 weeks ago, when he addressed the press conference in the Villa, he alluded to some of the things that I'm also saying here today. So he made this press statement in the Villa. So that shows clearly that we are all in sync. So the problem in Nigeria is that, before now, government, they've always come out to say that they know those that are financing the bandits, they know those that are financing the terrorists. But how many have they prosecuted? So I think, and I believe strongly, that as a commander-in-chief, the information available to him is even much more than the information out there, certainly, due to the privilege of the office he is occupying. So we strongly believe, and we know, that they have sufficient information to fight this menace. But the problem is the will. Today, you send
if the problem is the will
to man some of these pipelines.
Just 1 second, comrade.
Correct.
If the problem is the will to do, is that a covert, in your opinion, is that a covert sanctioning or approval of the rot that's going on?
Yes. Because they have not told us why they are not able to muster the will to get it done. That could be the insinuation. It could be the insinuation, because if your economy is being brought to comatose, you realize that NNPC in the last several months has not been able to remit money to the Federation account. Because most of the bulk of the money that comes in, they use it for fuel subsidy. That is understandable. But if our production today, if we are hitting 2 million barrels today, or at best, we are doing the OPEC quota, which is about 1.82 million barrels per day, I believe strongly that even beyond the subsidy, NNPC would have been able to be remitting money to the account. So every government should be worried, most especially when its revenue is dwindling, not to be going cap in hand, going all over the world and crowding local financial institutions to get loans to fund your appropriation act. For us, we don't think it is right. So in terms of the will, clearly the will is not there. We have seen it. If you look at it, in August, it was just reported a few days ago that our production further dropped down to 972,000 barrels per day. Before now, we barely even get to a million plus. But in August, it went down. That shows that clearly the production is still going down. So for any government that is serious, they should know that, no, this is a monster that we must confront. Clearly, they have the intelligence, they have the information. Some of the engagement we have had shows clearly that it's not because of a lack of intelligence, but it's majorly the will to fight this. As I have said, it's a total conspiracy, 100% conspiracy against the people of Nigeria.
Comrade, you referred to the managing director of NNPC and the statement he made earlier in the week. But those that he was pointing accusing fingers to have given a rebuttal and denied any involvement. And then you had this protest. Has there been any response since the protest took place?
Yes. First of all, you know, in Nigeria, we live in denial. When you catch somebody today stealing a goat, the person will go to court tomorrow and swear to affidavit that he never stole a goat. Clearly, the oil and gas companies operating in the Niger Delta, they pay security forces on a daily basis. They hire army, they hire naval officers to protect most of these installations. Yes, they do. So what the questions we have asked is this. When you post soldiers, when you post naval ratings to protect these pipelines, and at the end of the day, these pipelines are compromised, what are the investigations that you have carried out? Who are the people that you have recalled? It's not just to recall the soldiers and send them to another area. No. You bring them in, at the end of the day, you investigate. And once you investigate, if people are indicted, they should be prosecuted to serve as deterrents to others. If all you simply do is to move them and transfer them to other areas, and you send some new people there, they will repeat exactly the same thing. So we must learn consequence management in Nigeria. In the Western world, people choose to do what is right, not because they are sent, not because they intended to do what is right, but because they know that if they do the crime, they also do the time. So that is what we must learn. But secondly, to your question, yes, since we started the protest, we'll be having calls all over. They have been giving us assurances on some of the things that they have put in place, referring to even the contract that was awarded to the company that was associated with Tompulu, that for them, they believe that let's allow this process to run, that they believe this could be the tonic that will change the system. But do you know that we have advocated in the last 6 months and 1 year that government should, in the interim, develop a local solution? Then you can start thinking of the long-term solution. That the local solution that you could develop could be something bordering on involving the host communities, involving the local chiefs, and also, have a multi-stakeholder approach to this issue. So that is actually what we have recommended in the last 1 year. If this was done a long time ago, by now, we wouldn't have been where we are today. But will this sustain it in the long run? The answer is no. Because tomorrow, if let's assume a particular company, local company, you are awarding them a contract, and the contract runs for 2-3 years. Then maybe after the 3 years, you are now awarded to another company. There could also be a protest from that initial company because it's from the host community. So we must also develop technological capacity to get these issues resolved. Can we resolve this? We strongly believe we can, if the will is there. And if, oil and gas business is a multi-billion-dollar business. So the companies working in the Niger Delta, they are all ready to partner with the regulators. They are all ready to partner with government to get these issues resolved. They are ready to invest in the sufficient technology to get these issues resolved. SPDC the last time has commenced some research in this regard. So for us, we think all stakeholders must come together to get the issues resolved. Otherwise, I can tell you that if this problem is not solved, before the end of the year, crude oil production could go down as low as 500,000 barrels per day. Remember, it's been average of 1.2, 1.3 million barrels per day. But in August, it went down to 972. Before the end of the year, it could go further down. So the government must wake up. This is a clarion call to them because it is greatly affecting our members. Our members are losing jobs because companies are shutting in the Niger Delta that they can no longer produce. They are not paying the salaries of our members, and Nigeria as a government is not also making revenue.
Now, one of the findings that is out there is that if you carry out the threat that you have in mind, Nigeria could lose about 1.37 trillion naira. By your own estimation, what has Nigeria lost so far to this theft?
Ayo, if you simply take, okay, as of today, You know, most of this theft is being recorded in the onshore operations. So onshore and swamp operations, maybe shallow waters, but not really deep offshore. The reason we are still able to produce average of 1 million barrels per day is because, I mean, that 1 million barrels per day is attributable to the deep offshore productions, the Akpo FPSOs, the Gina FPSOs, Usan, Bonga, Agbami, and all that. But in the onshore, that accounts for close to 30–40% of our production. That is where we have the challenge as of today. So now, if you look at, before the pandemic started, we were actually doing about 2 million barrels per day. But today, we are doing average of 1 million barrels per day. So if you take your Excel and you impute this, and you multiply this by the quantity or by the price of crude oil, once you multiply it and multiply it by the number of days we have suffered this problem, then you could see the humongous amount of money. If you do it in your scientific calculator, I can assure you that you are going to have a lot of race to pass. But if you use your Excel, it could give you an indication of where we are today. So losing over 500,000 barrels per day. Remember, it's not that they steal this entire crude that I have just said here. But what now happened is that a lot of companies do not have shut-in productions. So they don't send the crude into the pipeline anymore. But the fact that they have shut down production, it is attributable to the crude oil theft. So that means the total volume that is being shut in and stolen is over 500,000 barrels per day. So if it's very simple, all Nigerians can take their Excel sheet and get the calculation done. It is humongous. But part of this money, you know, is a joint venture business. In the JV, then you have the PLCs. So averagely, 60% of these is supposed to be what is accruable to the Nigerian government, averagely. Then about 40% will go to the operating companies. So what that means is that if you take that 500,000 barrels, you find 60% of it, that gives you maybe around 300,000 barrels. So multiply it by the expected value, you see the challenge. And because of this as well, the government has not been able to pay cash call to most of the operating partners. They've not been able to pay cash call for a very long time because they are not making revenue at all. So it's a big problem, it's a total problem. Yes, as per what we lose if we go on our threat, the point clearly is that we don't really want to get to that point. That's the reality. We are extremely patriotic. We don't want to get to that point. But Ayo, what is the use? Every day you go to farm, you have tomatoes farm. So you are producing the tomatoes at the point of harvest. You have people come to the farm, they steal your tomatoes. Then you go back again next year, you do the same thing. If it is you, what are you going to do? You are going to find solution to it. Or rather, you pack up and you move on. We have lost $billions of investment because of this problem.
Comrade,
most of the
IOCs
today, you know, they are divesting. They are divesting. One of the reasons that they are divesting is actually because of this menace. That is why most of their onshore production facilities, they are divesting. ExxonMobil, you heard the last one, ExxonMobil and Seplat. I mean, they've been in discussion and all that because the entire JV operations, they want to let go. Although ExxonMobil is not as hit compared to SPDC, MPDC, Total E&P and all that. So it is a monster, it is a problem that must be confronted.
Comrade, among your concerns is the fact that many of those doing this business, as you call it, are those who are in government. So are you helping government in the investigation at all? And have you given them the information that you have?
Yes, like I said, you know, we have members cut across the entire facilities. We have members in all the production sites in Nigeria. So as much as the information we have, we pass them on. That's the reality. So as much as information that we have, we pass them on. Then also, when government, we are ready to partner with all stakeholders. We are ready to provide as much information that we can, that are available to us, because this is our industry. We mustn't allow it to die. Because a lot of Nigerians and a lot of households are going to suffer. If you trace the number of people that are dependent on an average oil and gas worker, it's humongous. In fact, an average oil and gas worker is like a local government chairman, just as every other Nigerians are as well. But because of the position the oil and gas occupy in the industry, so it could be said that the dependence on an average oil and gas worker is much more than any other worker in any other industry in Nigeria on an average basis. So, for us, we are ready to partner with government. For us, we are ready to provide information. That we have been doing, and that we are still ready to do. We are ready to profile solutions on how this could be done. Like we have said, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of researches that are available all over the world. Mexico was facing this kind of issue at a time, but today, Mexico have been able to put that behind them. Then as well, in Saudi Aramco, if you see the entire control room of Saudi Aramco, it spans several acres because they use that control system to monitor what happens across the field locations and across the pipelines. We need to put system in place to be able to know the total oil production in Nigeria. We need to put systems in place to be able to know how much of this do we send into pipeline, how much of this do we put into tankers. I mean, we must develop the capacity.
Comrade, I beg your pardon. Comrade, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. We're running out of time, and we need to discuss with you before you go in what ways you think that this can be curbed. Pengesan must have some ideas as to what government can do.
Yeah, one, at the short run, government must quickly, meet with the host communities in these major areas where this problem has been, because it's not really everywhere in Niger Delta. There are places that this has been spotted, like the high point where this happens on a daily basis. You must partner the host communities. You must quickly get security agencies down there. Anyone that compromised must be made to face the music. It's not that one person compromised and you now change that person and bring another one. No. If anybody compromised, that person must be made, must face court martial, and at the end of the day, if possible, the person will be jailed if found guilty. When you do that and you send any other officers there, they will all do what is right. That's number one, in the short run. But in the long run, we must invest in technology. Today, there are drones all over the world. There are just
a quick one, comrade.
Like I've said over and over again.
On the short run intervention that you talked about, I see that in all of these conversations, we don't generally involve the oil-producing states. Yet they have, that is a derivation fund that they also get. Is there a role that you see for state governments in this short-run intervention that you talked about?
Yes, because the shortage in revenue today, it affects the 13% derivation. Because when you are going to collect and there is no money coming to government from the crude, your 13% derivation is gone. Yes, there is a huge role for state. I mean, when I say government, the government I'm referring to is not just federal government. We have government at the three levels, federal, state, and local. So it is the three of them whenever I refer to government and the various arms of government, because they are all government. So we don't care if it is local, federal, or state. But they should all come together. And these states, they have more information, much more than federal. So there must also be synergy between the state government as well as the federal government. Because these state government, they are the ones that appoint traditional rulers.
Comrade,
so
quickly, tell us what you have in the long term, because we have to close now. Quickly, in one sentence, in the long term, what is your suggestion?
In the long term is technology. Drone technology, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, all these must be brought together, and you develop a control unit and a control system where our entire production and flows across the pipelines and across the terminals and production sites must be monitored. So that at the end of the day, you have real-time information. Whenever any of this pipeline is being compromised, you get the information immediately, and you deploy security forces there to get this call. So we must invest in technology, and this is doable.
Comrade Festus Osifo, President Pengasan, which is the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Sunrise will return in just a moment with another interesting conversation. Do join us.
So stay with us. Let me ask you a question. How strong is the building you are living in right now? How solid, how reliable is the integrity of the walls, the pillars, and all? Do you have any idea? Do you have any idea?
No.
Well, gratefully we can laugh over it now. But it wasn't funny when, it is not funny anytime we have to have this kind of occasion of building collapse. Of course, the building collapse issue has become a norm, or rather, it's become a menace, and God forbid that it will become a norm in our country with the continuous rate of collapses that we have from time to time.
In the last 2 weeks, one can safely say that it may be becoming a norm.
Which is why I said
frequency,
God forbid. Exactly.
You know.
The latest of them, we understand, is a 3-story building along the Awoshika Avenue of Bodija in Ibadan. Yeah, and that should send some shivers down because I'm used school in Ibadan, so you'd understand. That's, of course, the Oyo State capital in Nigeria. 7 people were said to have been injured in that collapse. So the building was said to have been sealed off by government. Another one said to have been sealed off by government before work recommenced on site.
Which is the same story we heard about the one that collapsed in Lagos.
In Lagos. So there are the pointers to the use of substandard materials as the major cause of this incident, and also the issue is not just going to go away unless we do what we need to do about it to ensure that, we save ourselves. Last Sunday, of course, the one that you're referring to, that building collapse in Oniru area of Lagos, where 5 persons were confirmed dead as an uncompleted 7-story building which was undergoing construction at Obaidu, Oniru Street, Victoria Island. So, of course, there was also another one reported in Abuja. So yes, you're correct within about 2-3 weeks or so. Yeah. Abuja had its fair share in August last month. 2 people were confirmed dead.
And there was one in Kano.
Yes, another one in Kano as well.
God.
Well, let's discuss this morning with 3 gentlemen, all structural engineers. So that's why I asked about the structure of the building you're living in. Ben Onyerionwu is with us this morning. Engineer Ben Onyerionwu, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Engineer Adeyinka Adeboye, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, sir.
As well as Engineer Bright Upono, thank you for being here this morning. And let me begin with you, Engineer Onyerionwu. Each time you hear a building collapsed, you must feel devastated.
Sure.
And what readily comes to mind for you?
Well, when a building goes down under construction, it's quite a different ballgame. When a building goes down, after it's been constructed and people are already occupying it. So when a building goes down under construction, the feeling I get is a failed enforcement of building codes and practices.
Okay, let's understand the differences. So you've dichotomized 2 now.
Sure.
A building that collapses after it's been completed and people are living in it, and a building that collapses under construction. What's the difference? They are all buildings.
Yeah, they're all buildings, but you find out that a building is such that it is designed to carry its own weight and the weight of the occupant. So that is the goal of every building. But while it's constructing, you've not even added the extra weight.
The human beings.
And it's going down.
Okay.
So that shows you that something is fundamentally wrong which has to do with enforcement of the applicable rules, codes, and standards, which is very, very unfortunate as we see them happening all over the place.
Okay. Engineer Adeboye, what are your first thoughts on this?
When we have any building collapse, the first thing that normally comes to my mind is that somebody is not doing what he's supposed to. And my first blame always goes to the client. You are the initiator. The cost and everything is coming from you. So you determine who are the people to work with you from the design stage and the construction stages. So what's the first blame is always the client that maybe refuse to do the due diligence, having the mind of cutting corner, or having the mind of getting a quack so that to get a cheaper or cheap labor. So when
but Mr. Adeboye, the client may have the right crew, let me use that word, but it is the crew that is trying to make more money off the client by cutting corners. That also is an option, isn't it?
Yes, that is an option, but that is occasionally. The major, let's say 80% of it, is that at least, let us, for an example now, we all know that we have a professional structural engineer, and we all know that anything that will be a little bit a good quality will be a little bit high.
Costly, yes.
Costly. But now you have somebody that wants to maybe carry out a structural design for you, let's say 500,000. Then you now have another person of 100,000. And then what you have in mind, majorly, is the cost. You are not going to get a good design that you can be able to have a rest of mind on. That is the aspect I'm talking about.
Okay.
We all know in Nigeria that majorly, our clients really want everything cheaper from
Everybody
the materials.
wants everything cheaper. As much as possible.
Let me bring you in at this stage. Let's analyze what he has just said. That it is the client who is trying to cut corners. Somebody has given him a quote for 500, but he goes for the one of 100. Whose duty is it to ensure that whichever one he decides to use, a specific quality of material must be used for that building? Whether it is 100,000 you choose or 500, the quality that you must use must be XYZ. Whose job is it to determine that?
Okay, thank you. The building construction is unfortunate the way it takes in Nigeria today. Ordinarily, Koren is empowered by law to regulate.
Who's that, please?
Koren,
yes.
Council for Regulation of Engineering Practice in Nigeria.
Engineering practice, okay.
It's the only body empowered by law to regulate engineering practice, construction inclusive. The issue of patronizing somebody who will take 100,000 or 500,000 is an act of ignorance, and to a large extent because the laws have not been applied appropriately. Now, we have engineers that are registered. We have standard for determining cost for executing a particular project, which we call EcoPace, which Koren gave out, which is like a recommendation. Now, when you engage a registered engineer, he knows what he should do. He knows what is expected of him to do. The issue of materials, people have pointed out materials. Of course, you can equally have good materials on site. If the mix is not proper, it's like somebody who wants to cook.
Cement to
sand.
It's
somebody who wants to cook. You have meat, you have everything. But if you're a bad cook and you added more salt than necessary, of course you have the ingredients separate, independent, could have been adjudged to be good, but the mix will be maybe bad. Then you have a very bad product. So your question, who determines the quality? Of course, in our university training, is the only person trained to actually know what is right, the right mix, and the right procedure is actually the structural engineer.
Is it possible for me to build a house without a structural engineer?
No, it is not possible.
Does it happen in Nigeria?
It happens in Nigeria.
So it is possible.
No,
That's why we have
you see, when you say it is possible, yes, people are doing it, but by law, like Lagos State government law says, for you to submit your building documents and for it to be acceptable to government, no other professional is required to write a letter of supervision except the structural engineer.
How old is this law you're talking about?
This law, it has been there since.
So let me assume over the past 20 years,
Yes,
at least, right?
It has been there.
Yet we have had so many building collapses in Lagos.
Yeah.
Yes. Reason being that is where implementation comes in.
Implementation of the law.
Yes.
Is that to say that most of the collapses do not happen, they happen because structural engineers do not sign off?
For example, some of the collapses we had, we were told that some of these buildings do not even meet the approval requirements. Some don't have permits, some were sealed, and the clients went ahead to continue. Some of the documents usually that they could not, maybe they didn't meet up to the requirement, could be no structural engineer on the site. When I say structural engineer, we must equally understand it's not every civil engineer that goes around is a structural engineer. So this issue of quacks could be someone could be a graduate, yes, it's a quack in that area. You need somebody who is registered, recognized as a structural engineer to endorse that your approval document and accept the responsibility to supervise. The question is, we in this country, we have buildings, 12-story buildings, 15-story buildings that are still standing, built 20, 30 years ago. So why is it that if 20-story building can stand, why should the 7-story building collapse?
Okay. Well, engineer, you began by saying anytime there is a building collapse, the first thing that comes to your mind is failure of enforcement or compliance to the rules. And then we've also heard a situation, I mean, let's take the last one in Lagos, for instance. And it's also the first time I'm hearing that a government official as high as a commissioner would resign simply because a building collapsed in Lagos and the state government is, has decided to be a little more forceful. In a situation such as this one where the laws were complied with, enforcement was initiated, but some folks somewhere, owner of the property that you referenced the other time, would go back and say, go ahead and continue. He comes with his own enforcements against the enforcement of government. In that case, what happens?
Well, it's quite unfortunate because the only thing that can make a developer or a client do such a thing is because there are no consequences. There are no consequences. If there are consequences, they wouldn't do that. And I tell you the truth. The solution doesn't really lie, or it doesn't all lie in what my colleague here have just said, getting approvals from the engineer, endorsed and all that. It also comes from having a structural engineer round the clock on site. Because most people just believe that because the drawing has been endorsed by the structural engineer, he has taken responsibility through a letter, it's all okay. No, it's not all okay. We need to enforce the law that says that when the building construction is going on, there should be a resident structural engineer on site.
No matter the size of the building?
No matter the size of the building, because he is the one that said he's going to supervise.
Okay.
Because what happens is that when that letter is written and they endorse the drawing, they go away. You don't even go to the site anymore.
I have to also quickly
that's where the problem starts from.
You help us also understand. Who is a structural engineer? What are his functions or responsibilities at the site?
Sure, thank you. A structural engineer on site has the responsibility to ensure that the building construction is carried out according to design. According to design. And while the construction is going on, is also reviewing the design and so that everything meets the required standard.
So, Mr. Ben.
Sure.
That building that collapsed on Gerrard Road, the 21-story, we were told that it was not supposed to have been 21. But a building of that nature in that neighborhood, would you say that there was no structural engineer on site? Because we were told it wasn't supposed to have gone as high as 21.
There was a structural engineer on site, and as we were made to understand, he even pulled out of sight.
In protest?
In protest, because the building was illegally turned into a 20-story building. He moved out of sight.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say here is that having an engineer on site is paramount to preventing building collapse. It's not just enough signing the drawing and it goes home.
Okay. Mr. Adeboye, about 4 years ago, Lagos State instituted a building code. From your practice, because you are in the industry, is that code being adhered to?
Okay, yes, we have a lot of code apart from building code from the Lagos State. We have a BSc code that we are using. We have a national code that we are using. Everything still go to the implementation. And everything, when you're talking about implementation, you still need to refer to the client. Most of the time, when a client contacted you for a structural drawing, the agreement is that after the drawing, you will be the one to be coming to the site when they are carrying out any structural element to see. And we all know that this thing has a cost to it. But when they collect the structural drawing, you won't see them again.
Who? You will not see
the client.
You will not see the client?
You will not see the client because you have an agreement that, okay, when they are about to finish the foundation, you have to come and look at the reinforcement to be sure that it was according to the what they have in the working drawing. But because they don't want to pay extra cost, they may not contact you anymore. And then the alteration, we have to talk about the alteration too.
Is that because structural engineers charge stage by stage, or what?
It depends on.
Is there a block charge that he has to pay the structural engineer? It
depends on the nature of the building, and then the agreement between the structural engineer and the client. Sometimes the structural engineer, you may be contacted to be on site throughout the project. Okay. And sometimes you produce the structural drawing, and then you have to be going to the on-site to monitor every structural element stage. Like let's say a raft foundation, before they can start the casting, you have to go and see the reinforcement placement that is according to your structural working drawing. But most of the clients will not come back to come and inform you anymore because they have gotten the drawings and they think that is all. It's not all. And sometimes the alteration, let's also say it's a sit room of 6 meters by 6 meters. When you are doing your design, you consider the 6 meters in your design. On getting to the site, the client can decide that the sitting room is too small. They should increase it to 9 meters. Not knowing that the 3 meter difference can cause collapse because it's a lot. So you need a structural engineer to come and review the drawing. That is why I'm saying you don't need to cut corner anytime you are talking about a structure. You don't need to, because the structural engineer knows the parameter used in those designs. It's not something you can just agree with your contractor on site and change the structural design just like that.
Well, Mr. Okono, is the client not being penny wise, pound foolish at the end of the day?
Of course.
You spend all that money, and in 3 years, your building collapses, or even collapses while it is still being constructed.
Of course, that is the truth. The question is asked, the responsibility of structural engineer on site. You see, my years of experience and interaction with clients have shown me a funny trend. Most Nigerian clients are interested in the aesthetics of their building.
Not the structure.
The painting, how the curves and all those. And usually I tell them, look, it is only when the structural frame is solid, stable, that you can talk about aesthetics. A structure that is weak and collapsed. All the paint, you see clients in Nigeria, they can spend millions of naira, 10, in fact, 100 times the fee that structural engineer would have asked for to do tiles, do fantastic POP, yet you refuse to pay somebody who will ensure the integrity, stability of your building.
But you don't blame them.
Like you said?
Just a second.
Yes.
You buy a car.
Okay.
You don't buy the engine.
Yes.
You bought the car.
Yes.
You want to drive anywhere with it.
Okay.
And it looks fine.
Fine.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That analogy may not come in. Yes, because sorry, sir. No, before you go far.
Wait. There are connections.
Yes.
A car has pillars, has frames,
Okay.
an engineering
Chassis.
function as well,
Yeah.
chassis and body frame and all those things, has an engine and the rest of it.
Okay.
But the guy who bought the car bought a car.
Okay, I will ask you.
Wait now, Oga, wait. It is fine.
Yeah.
Leather seats,
Yeah.
cool AC.
Yes.
Inside, it has fine smell.
And it
Very
has technology.
And it has technology, touch screen. That's what the guy bought.
Thank you.
The guy wasn't told about the engine, the chassis, the body frame, and all those things, and it is black.
Okay.
It's fine. That's what the guy bought. Parallel to the vehicle, to the cars, to the building,
Yeah.
the fellow wants to point to a fine-looking building.
Okay.
Period.
Well, let me ask you. You know, in buying car, you buy brand.
Correct.
Assuming you now hear that Dr. Bright has set up a car plant in Nigeria. You've not heard of me at all. You don't know anything about me. I'm not texted, trusted, nothing. I now produce a car.
Yes.
Now, but
Let me even make it worse.
Sir,
Let me
you
even
know
make it
that
worse.
Mercedes,
Mr. Bright,
is texted, trusted. In terms of aesthetics, they're good. Durability, you have all the parameters rated. In fact, there are organizations in the world, I don't know because I'm not in that field, that would have rated them. This is so class, so class. That is why Mercedes, BM, or any of these brands, the cost of their brand differs. And you will wake up because you want to buy a brand that you are comfortable with. You just go and say, this is what I want to buy.
Exactly.
Why you know you can trust that brand. The question in building industry, you that want to build, who do you patronize?
Can I say something here?
The person that is your the consultant, do you know their names? Have you taken time to say, let me check, are you registered? Are you properly trained?
Look, you drew.
Okay.
I'm coming to you shortly.
Yes.
You drew a very fantastic analogy in saying one Bright Motors just suddenly came.
Yeah.
This Bright Motors may, for all you care, have met all the parameters. It is possible that he knows the industry. There was a time Toyota had to pull out a whole range of their vehicles because of one defect.
Yes.
So it is possible. But the point that you are making, and I do understand, is people buy more of aesthetics. That's essentially what you're saying, than the fact that, okay, these things, are really there, simply because they know that they can trust that brand. But people trusted a particular brand before, and they had to pull out all of their brand. I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying that people may not really be given to the fantastic details.
Yeah, let me throw in a very quick point on that. You're right in what you said. You're buying aesthetics, you're buying a car, right? And you're not buying the engine. No matter how powerful the engine is, what you're saying, what you're buying.
Unless you're a car freak.
Yeah, but there's something you forgot there. With buildings, lives are involved. That's the difference.
Yeah.
If the engine is not good, it just won't work.
With cars, lives are involved too, because
you learn to walk.
eventually. I don't understand what you're saying.
For buildings, lives are involved. That's why you need to care about the engineer.
Okay. Where the thoughts, what he said, the thoughts that they brought to my mind is there seems to be a lot of quacks in this industry.
A lot.
Why is that so, then?
Well, because there's a lot of money to be made. Anywhere there's a lot of money to be made,
Simple.
there are the quacks. But then there should be consequences for the actions of the quack.
Okay, now we have just about 10 minutes. Let's look at solutions now and see what needs to be done. You've identified that there are quacks in the industry.
Sure,
and I'm almost certain that the number of quacks cannot equate the number of professionals in the industry. How does the Nigerian looking at us right now, listening to this conversation, who wants to avoid a building collapse before or after construction, what does he do? How does he go about finding the right person?
Very easy. Very easy. You contact a building professional. The first person of contact is the architect. Okay? And what most clients do is they will mandate the client, they will mandate the architect to bring the remaining professionals in the building team. But mark you, there are so many professionals in the building team. It's not only the structural engineer. We have the mechanical and electrical engineer there too. Okay? The architect needs them to midwife the building. So in most cases, they rely on the architects to bring in those professionals. All right? And they don't even vet the qualifications of those professionals and see that they're actually qualified to work with the architect. And then another problem with clients is that most of them don't know the value of a structural engineer in the building. They don't know.
Exactly.
The client or...
Most clients don't know the value of an engineer working in the building. If the architect tells them, or you tell them you need an engineer for a building, they don't understand what the work of the engineer is. So that's a very big problem.
So I guess that gives the engineering, industry a job of work.
They don't even know the value of the engineer.
Let me ask you, Engineer Adeboye, and you've all spoken quite eloquently about these issues, but you've spoken more to urban Nigeria. Someone in an Isenyi community, for instance, wants to build a one-story building of maybe just 2 rooms, or a block of story buildings, bungalow, that he can just be using for commercial purposes as well. Ordinarily, it will cost him maybe 1 million naira to build. Now you're advising this fellow to go get a structural engineer. How much does he have to add to his 1 million naira?
When we're talking about a bungalow, I don't think when you're talking about a bungalow in maybe a rural area, you may not need a structural engineer, because there's there's nothing more of a structural element involved.
Apart from the foundation.
Apart from the foundation. So when we're talking about a structural engineer, we're talking about when we're talking about a story building, where we can have a slab and everything. And I want people to know that you can equate building construction to medical line. We all know that when we want to attend to our health, we know where to go. Even some people will make a finding on the hospital they want to go. Some people will say, take me out of Nigeria so that I can get the best hand. The same thing you have to apply to building construction.
But I need you to also help people understand how it's different from, how urban building in urban Nigeria is different from rural Nigeria, because most of the collapses that we're talking about here happen in urban Nigeria. Much less of collapse in rural Nigeria is reported. Am I correct?
Yes.
So in that vein, are we saying that we don't have such cases in rural Nigeria?
When we're talking about building collapse, majority of the building collapse happen to be like high-rise building. We're talking about 7-story, where hardly you see 7-story in Isenyi or somewhere in Osun State. So, and then
you're saying that's why we don't hear of them in the rural area.
Then we're talking about soil condition. Let us take Lekki, for example. We know that the type of soil we have in Lekki is not the same thing we have in this environment. So you have to carry out the soil test, a lot of things. And then, mind you, it's not even sometimes the environments where you want to erect your building can still be a little disadvantage. because of the type of the building, the construction that will come up in that area later
Which
on.
necessitates the use of an engineer.
An engineer.
Okay. Now, Engineer Okolo, he began by talking about the poverty of, or paucity of enforcement. In a situation, first, what would you advise government here in this case? What would you advise that government does? Because in a situation where in Lagos, government enforced and then the client went and clicked undo on the enforcement of government, what happens in that space? What does the engineer at site do?
Okay. There are laws. When we hear things like this, we begin to ask ourselves, because growing up, I was told that no one single individual is bigger than government. But when you begin to see things happening, you begin to ask yourself, what you were taught as a young person, has it not changed?
Corruption.
So what is happening? I don't want anybody to confuse me. Government should do what is right. Somebody has violated the law. My colleague here said there must be consequence. Arrest the person. The person, we, the professionals, we have asked since we have series of building collapse in especially Lagos. We've not heard of any single person taken to court or tribunal, tried, convicted, and even sent to jail.
So you are assuming, well, you are alluding collusion of government officials?
No, it may not be collusion. There could be other issues there. But what we are saying is that government should sit up, at least you let people be tried, and let there be consequences for doing what is wrong.
An open trial.
Then for the issue of quacks, I understand again from experience in the industry. People must have something on their table. Nigerians must eat. We should not forget about the building industry. Ordinarily is one area that we employ so many people. But we need to manage the process properly so that people will function within the area that they are trained to.
Competence.
Now, in construction, we have two categories. We have the consultants, those who are trained with certificate, university certificate. Then you have the contractors. Within the scope of the contractors, those hands-on things, the one that does what? Then you have the consultant, the structural engineer, the mechanical engineer, who will come to check that what this man is doing is right. So if we have that proper combination, the ones who call quacks, they will have the space to operate, because the ultimate goal is to have something on their table and feed their family. We are not saying that they should take food off people. Yes. But have a proper combination, consultants and contractors on site. Yes.
Engineer, he alluded to my last question to you, which is the fact that some of these quacks, as you call them, they just want to put food on the table. So there's poverty in the land. The person who Engineer Adeboye said wants to compromise on quality is also doing it because there isn't so much that he can do because of the limited cash flow on his own hands as well. Is there a place or a way we can draw a balance between getting your need with all the resources with the limited resources that you have and the professionals? Because not building is not an option.
That is true. Like you said, we have to balance design and construction. Remember, construction, you don't have to be an engineer to be a building contractor. Being a building contractor is all commerce field. You can have a degree in any profession and you're a building contractor. But you must be an engineer to be a design engineer.
Like, Alero doesn't have to be an engineer.
She can decide to be a building contractor, it's allowed. You can be a building contractor. But while being a building contractor, you should work with a design consultant who does the general overseeing of your job. You follow his instructions. So while you, as a non-engineer, playing a role in construction, you have an engineer supervising you. You do whatever he says and go according to the codes and practices. That way we'll strike a balance between the quacks and the engineers. Remember, anybody can be a contractor. It's allowed. It's an all-commerce field. But not everybody can be a design engineer.
It's just, sounds like the beginning of conversations for me.
We are going to have to wind down now. Before we do that, Mr. Ben, I want to ask you, what are the various engineering bodies doing about this menace? Because at the end of the day, when these things happen, you are the ones we all look at.
Yes. And that's why you're here.
Where were you when this thing collapsed?
Yes.
What did you do? What are you doing? So what are the various bodies doing?
The various bodies have done all they can on paper.
On paper.
To ensure this does not happen. But like I said earlier when I started, it's enforcement. On paper, everything has been done. But enforcement is the issue. For example, when the 2020 building collapsed at Ikoyi, a panel was set up. Who headed the panel? We have quantity surveyors, we have architects, we have town planners heading the panel. How can that be?
So there is a problem there.
How can that be?
Okay. Well, as I said, it's the beginning of conversations, or rather, perhaps a continuation of conversations, so people have a better understanding of the process. For now, Engineer Ben Anyeriowo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Engineer Deyin Kadibayo, thank you.
Thank you.
As well as Engineer Bright Okpono. All structural engineers, thank you so much for being here this morning. When we return from this break, Sunrise takes up another topic. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. A few months ago, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Muhammadu Buhari, approved 134 billion naira as security department allowance, debarment allowance, thank you, to the deserving retired military officers and personnel. Of course, the defense minister told the obviously elated members of the veteran community that the outstanding SDA allowance will be paid over a period of 3 to 5 years, since government cannot afford to pay in a tranche. So, on modalities for payment, the defense minister told the veterans that the Ministry of Defense has taken steps to facilitate the seamless payments of the SDA to qualified veterans through the review of the effective date of the Manual for Financial Administration, they call it MAFA, as of 2017. So let's have a conversation around this morning. We understand that the government also approved the creation of a new Department of Veterans Affairs in the Ministry of Defense. Our guest this morning will help us understand what this whole thing is about. Ambassador Roy Oamien Okediewie is Director of Media, CCV. He is there alongside Abiodun Druwaye Herbert, who is the National Coordinator of Remenaf. Gentlemen, thank you for being a part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you. So let's begin with Ambassador Roy Okediewie. What are we looking at here? Many people are probably hearing about this for the first time.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm very happy about the rider you threw out. You know, you talked about the approval. But before that approval, there was a protest in January, if you recall, before the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. And that protest was for two major things. The old arrears of 24 months for the minimum wage increment. And that is being given attention right now, but it is also backed up into tranches of payments in peanuts, you know. And right now, the security department allowance, we had to start writing letters again, start to agitate again before the approval, before the Honorable Minister of Defense called for a parley and a discussion. And in that discussion, in that approval, in the previous protest, all of that, people are leaving the armed forces and they are paid in full. And, you know, when you pay those people in full and you are telling us you want to pay us in tranches between 3 to 5 years, how many would be alive? Because this catchment that you have right now is comprised of the elderly, those that trained and commanded the ones that you are paying in full right now. So we were not able to factor in the understanding that got to such resolutions, you know, and the minister promised on that day that he will go and have a discussion and get back to us. We have written a letter to him as a reminder on how it was resolved between 3 to 5 years. There has been no response.
Okay, that's at least now we know what the issues are. You want to add to it, Mr. Drowaye Herbert?
Yeah, thank you once again, Nigerians and my distinguished comrades. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, what my colleague had said is correct, very correct. We had written letters, series of letters, and like you mentioned, the situation we're right now didn't just start today. We started this agitation as far back as May 2020, when we're excluded from the debarment allowance. What they told us at that time was that only those who retired from 2017 till date will be qualified. And we said to them that we all served this nation. And if security debarment allowance is an allowance payable to all veterans, retired military veterans, to encourage them and to debar them from using the skills that they acquired in the course of their service to this nation against the state, how then would you say some sections are entitled to it while the others are not entitled to it?
Just a second, Ambassador.
It doesn't just make any sense.
Mr. Drowaye Herbert, just one second, Mr. Drowaye Herbert.
Yes.
Perhaps a good point for us to understand exactly what the security debarment allowances are.
That's right. And that was what I just said. Debarment allowance is an allowance payable to every veteran on retirement, right? And then, I mean, it is to debar us and discourage us from using the skills that we acquired while serving against the states. You know the insurgency, everywhere in the country today. There's a tendency that most of our members may be frustrated, and then, terrorists may buy into, into them and invite them to give them some kind of level of training. And of course, we have a lot of, skills. I mean, with officers and men that have gone through series of training in this country, whether at home and abroad as well. So it is to debar us from using the skills that we acquired in the course of our service against the state. This money should be paid in bulk so that you can use it to set up business. And so there won't be any need. There won't be any need for you, you would rather be attracted to any influence, external influence that will make you to use the skill that you acquired against the state. That's what the allowance is meant for.
Mr. Drowaye Herbert, so if you get that money in bulk, it is assumed that it will debar you from going to sell your services or sell your expertise to other people who are working against the state, right? So,
absolutely. So.
Yes. So those who collect that debarment allowance and still go and sell their expertise, what happens to them? First of all, who's checking that nobody is doing that? And if the checker finds that, yes, there are one or two people, well, there are a number of people who are doing it, what happens to those people?
Of course, they face the wrath of the law. I mean, recently, a retired or discharged soldier was arrested, and it's all over the media. So if you are caught doing that after being paid such money, then you're on your own. You face the wrath of the law. And we are saying that we retired earlier. And those who are retiring, even as we speak, are being paid this money in bulk. So why would you need to spread our own payment, between 3 and 5 years? That's not acceptable to us, and that's not fair. And that's what we're saying, that if this money is going to be paid, then it should be paid the same way others that had been paid before us are being paid. And then, of course, they also said, that there's going to be a verification exercise before those who are qualified will be entitled to be paid. And we said no, because last year, December, we held a nationwide protest, and it culminated in Abuja here in January on the 5th. And then it was about the old 24 months of arrears of the minimum wage. Now, after the protest, it was, agreed that the commencement of the arrears, the money will start to be paid that same month. Although we didn't get it that same month, but we got it first week of in February. Now, rather than paying this money that has been owed for 24 years at once, they decided to split it. And the approval did not give anybody the authority to split this money. In this country, there is enough for individuals to steal. But when it comes to those who are, are legitimately entitled to their allowances, they will find excuses like, there's no money. Who told you there's no money in this country? And that was why I said, there's always, enough for individuals to steal. But for us, you begin to hear all sorts of stories.
Minister has also made known is that the SDA will be paid over a period of 3 to 5 years because government cannot afford to pay at a go. What's your understanding of that? Is that a sentiment you share or something that you refuse to understand with government?
Well, to us, as the veteran community, we see every day where this same government give palliatives to other countries. We see it. There is on Vera News. We also know that there are certain persons that have been found that have diverted large sums of money. And those cases have not gone anywhere. We are also aware that certain diverted funds have been returned back to the country. We are aware that the country consistently borrows money from the foreign investors and foreign loan banks. So in all of these that we see, it is insincere to give us that kind of verdict. And how come those that are living now get the total payment? Why not backlog and say, wait for your time, and pay those that you are owing? Since they are also coming into the veteran community, they will meet the backlog being paid out to others as your set of retirement is captured. You see, these things are just, it's not rocket science, it's common sense. Let me tell you something that is part of the problem. Part of the problem is that the Veteran Affairs Department that you just mentioned right now, it's supposed to be populated by veterans holding reasonable actionable desk and responsibilities because they feel the impact on their community. If you look at the Nigerian Legion also, which is also constituted as a veteran body, it has a larger part of its constituent members as raw civilians. They are not veterans. If you see some Legion people in some places, ask them to show you their discharge army certificate. As I speak to you, they are in guard duties in so many places, wearing the Nigerian Legion uniform and badges. Ask them to show you their military discharge certificates. So once all of these responsible desks have been polarized, there is no voice, there is no place, no platform for the veterans to speak. That is why we started to raise pressure groups. And all the pressure groups have been consummated under the Coalition of Concerned Veterans. And these pressure groups all capture the commissioned officers and the non-commissioned officers. Even the membership of the one-star general and the retired members of Nigerian Army, Navy, Air Force officers, they are tired of going cap in hand to their subordinates. Most of the officers that hold offices today are subordinate to the officers in the veteran community. And they give you promises upon promises every day. And I will close this, my comment right now with this fact that people at the helms of affairs that are causing this dilemma to the veteran communities should be held responsible as sponsors of terrorism. Let me explain that. Now, if you allow military trained, both local and international, to be disgruntled, to be aggrieved, to be frustrated, to live amongst people where the tendency to be co-opted into terrorism lies. And you know that we have disciplined military community in Nigeria. We have global certification awards to show. And in Nigeria here, you will also agree with me that when coup d'etat became unfavorable, everybody shied away from it and went back to professionalism and enhanced democracy. Now, if some certain military officers in service and civilians in responsible desks of veteran affairs refuse to see the relevance of the security debarment allowance, you are also encouraging them to support the terrorism that is going on in the country. So invariably, you are looking at that lacuna and you are not seeing the importance of closing it up.
But Ambassador, now that the government has approved the creation of this new Department of Veterans Affairs in the Ministry of Defense, do you expect great things to start happening? Or should I say, don't you expect great things?
Thank you very much. Let me first take you back to the regime of General Olonisakin. I think we had this vision that we want to start the Veterans Federation of Nigeria because everybody was kicking against the Legion and its ineffectiveness for veteran matters. So we came together, the officer called all responsible parties together. We had a 3-day retreat in Abuja. And in that retreat, we raised up committees, different committees, lobby committees, this committee, that committee, headed by chairmen and secretaries. I'm a secretary to one of the committee. And in the course of that, we had to come back again for another 3 days retreat to consummate on all the findings and put up a document to the government to scrap the Legion and bring on the Veterans Federation of Nigeria. And till date, that matter just went cold. Now you are now coming up with the Veteran Affairs Department, which we have also been hearing, which has been, these things have been on ground, is to give them approvals to follow through, to be able to approach necessary and important ministries that are concerned with our affairs, like Ministry of Health in the Defense Health Scheme. We don't even want to go into that because it's just a charade. You know, now you have to form the Veterans Federation of Nigeria to give veterans the opportunity to hold offices and take action on issues that concern veterans. Now, let me also inform you that this whole agreement was documented and presented to government. So if this government that have the Honorable Minister of Defense, a veteran, that also got alert when we protested on the street, if this same government that has the president, a veteran, that also got alert when we protested on the street, how come we want to take it up with another government that is in 8 years, your veteran leadership could not solve your problems, which were gazetted and constituted in the Constitution of Nigeria? We are not asking for any other thing that is not already in the Constitution. So we want to go to meet another government that is coming in 2023. It's not fair.
Just to be clear, Ambassador, and I'm sure that many Nigerians watching and listening right now will be wondering, okay, so this is why some of these things are going on. But just to be clear, is there a cadre of veterans that are directly affected by this? Let me ask Mr. Ajuruwaye Herbert. Is there a cadre of veterans in the military at the various levels of our military apparatus that are directly affected by this, while some other cadres are exempted?
No, not at all. It cuts across. It cuts across. It's affecting everyone. I mean, from the least in rank to the highest. It cuts across. And that's why, you know, we are responsible people, and we are the most disciplined institution, you know, in this country. And in fact, worldwide, the military or the armed forces are the most responsible and the most disciplined. And this is why we feel ashamed that we had to resort to, you know, coming on air to say some of these things we're saying here.
So if I can ask another question, Mr. Herbert, Mr. Ajuruwaye Herbert, just a second. For how long has this been going on? Because when you say it cuts across, I'm assuming in my head right now that it's affecting the likes of former General Obasanjo, General Babangida, General Abdulsalami Abubakar. Is it possible that that's what you're saying?
Absolutely so. And it's quite unfortunate because some of us keep wondering. When we had this nationwide protest last year, and it culminated in Abuja, when we protested to the Ministry of Finance as well as the Ministry of Defense, no one in this country would pretend not to be aware. And so we are surprised that we have people like those you mentioned who could sit back and feel comfortable that an institution where they had served are bringing issues that ought to have been resolved internally out to the public. I mean, in the public.
If this is happening to...
This is where we find ourselves.
Yeah, if this is happening to veterans, Mr. Ajuruwaye Herbert, I'm wondering how... Just 1 second, if you can hear me. I'm wondering how you feel when you hear that some of your officers, whether it's that there are rumors or there are things that really did happen, that some officers, on the fields are protesting that they are not getting paid. So if this is happening to them while still in office, while still in service, how in the universe are they what are they gonna do, knowing that while in service, this is happening to them? What will happen to them when they leave, when they are no longer serving?
Absolutely. You just hit the nail on the head. And this is what we keep telling them, that look, the way you're treating us is not going to even encourage those that are serving at the moment. Because when they look back and see the way we've been treated, and putting all the sacrifices, as we speak, they are everywhere in the northeast, northwest, where there are insurgencies, where there are terrorism. These people, It is the reason why we're here today. Just take a look at it. Remove the armed forces from the equation or the project called Nigeria. We won't be here discussing. As we speak now, there are states that some of the local governments had already been captured by the terrorists. Just imagine that there is no armed forces in this country and other security agencies. How will we be here discussing these issues? And we are saying that if there's one segment of the society that must not be taken for granted, it is the armed forces. Because without us,
John,
I mean,
from
no country will survive.
Just a second, Mr. Druwaye Roberts. Druwaye Herberts. What's the payment system? Because to the best of my understanding, the payment platform or payment system used for public officers at the federal level is not the same thing being used for the military. The military is exempted from eyepiece, for instance. Is there a problem with that with the payment system that the military that's being used to pay military officers right now?
It's not the payment system that is the issue here.
No. I'm talking about that's for Ambassador. That's for Ambassador Roy Okidevia, please.
Oh, Ambassador. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, you know, if we talk about payment system, when the military was taken out of the IPPIS or something like that, you know, you can recall that the military pension board is solely responsible for disbursements. So the military pension board has responsible officers to handle the Army, Navy, and Air Force. And they have the database. Even when a soldier veteran dies, he is struck out of the payment plan. Now, if you now look at disbursement, military pension board, then regulation from the Ministry of Finance, that's why we shut down the gates of the Ministry of Finance. And they called the leadership into their office in that our January protest. We sat down with them and they showed us inflows and approvals that they have gotten and disbursement, what was possible. And we asked them to give us a letter, which they did. So money comes from the Federal Ministry of Finance to different agencies, plus the military, and from there to the military veterans. So there's no other mathematics that you want to do. See, this thing we're talking about started like 30 years ago. And when corruption started to creep into Nigerian system, people that work in the Nigerian system decided to take care of themselves before they leave. So since they will take care of themselves before they leave, there was no recourse to consider putting in effect the constitutional provisions for retirees. If we monitor constitutional provisions for retirees, why will I bother about anything when I know that once I leave service, I will be taken care of? So we have generals in the military that have been found wanting financial misappropriation. Why do you think they want to misappropriate finance? It is to take care of themselves. We have Navy, Army, Air Force personnel, senior officers that have been found wanting for financial misappropriations. So everybody wants to take care of themselves in every ministry. Why can't we focus on securing a standard and ensuring it is monitored to actualization? So when I leave service, I know I will have roof over my head, I will have an existing action, medical, and every other thing will be taken care of. You have traced it back to people like General Babangida. That protest that we had, where soldiers were carrying mats, go and look at it. I just came back from the US for a business meeting. I was carrying my own mat too because my senior colleagues were there. You can see senior officers that cannot put roof over their head. They were there. They are having ailments. They were there, and you owe them 24 months in arrears. And they had to come and protest. And when you started to pay, people that you mentioned now, all those people that are alive, they got alert. The president must have gotten his alert. The Honorable Minister of Defense, who might have been in the Ministry of Defense looking at us through the window, he's got his alert. So many other senior officers that work in this government that are holding government positions as veterans, they got the alert. So is this not very, very insensitive to the traumatic situations that this catchment of veterans that are not opportuned to still connect to government and get some freebies? So it's a sad situation.
Most certainly something very, very concerning, and something that I believe that having taken the lead of the issue now, everyone concerned would take a cue and know that the right thing needs to be done so we can forestall the evil day. Ambassador Roy Ohidievie is Director of Media CCV, as well as Abiodun Druwaye Herbert, National Coordinator Remenaf. Gentlemen, thank you so much for giving us this perspective. At least now Nigerians know what you are going through and what needs to be done.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Sunrise returns in a moment to take on our next issue. But don't forget, we mentioned earlier that at 11 o'clock, there's going to be an announcement. Please stay with us.
God save the King! Three cheers for His Majesty the King. Hip, hip! Hooray! Hip, hip! Hooray! Hip, hip! Hooray! two. Number two. Fire. Fire. Number one. Load. Cardiac. Number three. Three. Fire. Load. Cardiac. Number one. Number one. Load. Cardiac. Number three. Three. Fire. Load. Cardiac. Number one. Number one. Fire. Fire. Cardiac. Number two. Number two. Fire. Fire. Number one. Load. Cardiac. Number three. Three. Fire. Load. Cardiac. Number one. Number one. Fire. Fire. Number two. Number two. Fire. Fire. Number one. Load. Cardiac. Number three. Three. Fire. Fire. Load. Cardiac. Number one. Number one. Fire. Fire. Number two. Number two. Fire. Fire. Load. Cardiac. Number three. Three. Fire. Load. Cardiac. Congratulations! Yeah! D! Detachment! Hop! Detachment! Hop! Detachment! Hop! A! First City London Battery, Honourable Artillery Company, Royal Horse Artillery! Battery, Sharon!
for the formal proclamation of King Charles III as Britain's new monarch by the Historic Ascension Council. Because the ancient ceremony is taking place, as you can see, at St. James's Palace. The Ascension Council ceremony is to be followed by a public proclamation, the first public proclamation of the new sovereign.
Well, normally this happens within 24 hours of the death of the sovereign. But on this occasion, a little more time will have passed between the death of Queen Elizabeth II and the ceremony at St. James's Palace in London.
Another break in tradition, as would be obvious, is that King Charles III has decided that for the first time, the Ascension Council will be televised. Hey, how prominent was television 70 years ago? So, yeah.
Well, live television was almost non-existent.
Absolutely, exactly. So, yeah.
So who attends and what do we expect?
Well, a number of things to consider. You would know, of course, that it's a very complex system, if I would say. But, the council is attended by members of the Privy Council, which is a group of senior politicians that formally advised the monarch. The Lord Mayor of the City of London and senior judges and officials are expectedly part of it. Of course, the Ascension Council is divided into two parts, and Charles will only be present for the second.
In the first part, the Lord President, the MP Penny Mordaunt, appointed by Liz Truss on the 6th of September, will announce the monarch's death. She will then ask the clerk of the council, currently retired civil servant Richard Tilbrook, to read out the accession proclamation, which confirms the name of the new monarch.
So people who are wondering, where did King Charles III come from? I guess now you know. So the proclamation is then signed by members of the royal family, the Prime Minister, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Lord Chancellor, and the Earl Marshal, the Duke of Norfolk, who is responsible for organizing state ceremonies.
After the signing, Miss Mordaunt will call for silence, then read out the outstanding items of business, which include disseminating the proclamation and directing that artillery guns will be fired at Hyde Park in central London and the Tower of London.
I'm assuming that you have seen some of these processes on your screen. And of course, all of the information right now on your screen is making some sense now. So the proclamation will then be read out from a balcony above the Friary Court at St. James's Palace by the Garter King of Arms, which is England's senior herald. He is joined then by the Earl Marshal and other officials wearing traditional heraldic garments. The proclamation will also be read in Belfast, in Cardiff, in Edinburgh, and other locations around the country. That's part one.
The king. King as soon as his mother passed.
Oh, so that is automatic?
Automatic, yes.
The proclamation, that's another thing altogether. Colorful, isn't it? Part two of the, look at that on the screen right now. It's a beautiful one. So part two of the Ascension Council is the first meeting of the Privy Council held by the new monarch, and King Charles III is expected to begin with a personal declaration.
According to Robert Hazel, Professor of Government and the Constitution at the University College London, this usually has 3 elements. The king will commemorate the queen, affirm his fidelity to the Constitution, and express hope for the support of the nation in his heavy responsibilities.
Perhaps you may want to ask yourself, for those who have seen that video of the King's first broadcast, should I call it a global broadcast now? You know, you wondering where that is from or what part that operates, that plays in all of these? I guess time will tell and we'll wait to see. But under the terms of the Act of Union, new monarchs are also required to make an oath to maintain and preserve the Church of Scotland. Usually this takes place at Part 2 of the Ascension Council, and the new monarch signs 2 copies of the oath. All of these we expect to build up, you know, in the course of time.
I like this part. Charles can say if he objects to any of the oaths he's asked to make, although the last time a new monarch did so was in 1910, when King George V rejected the anti-Catholic wording of the Declaration Oath.
Well, I guess we'll wait to see.
If he will deny. Well, his grandfather did.
Well, the government of the time evidently agreed with him as he changed the wording in the Ascension Declaration Act of 1910. I'm wondering, so 1910 to now, that's quite a distance away. And a lot of things have changed.
More than a century ago.
So a lot of things have changed. So if the king objects to something, I'm assuming it would have been known well before now. But hey, what do I know? So after the Ascension Council concludes its business, it may be some time before Charles's coronation takes place. How long is that likely to last?
Some 16 months passed between the death of Queen Elizabeth's father, King George VI, in February 1952, and her coronation in June of 1953.
Whoa. That's quite some time.
So this is just the official declaration. The coronation will take place sometime later, and there's no telling how long from now that's going to be.
For some, this is actually a very interesting conundrum, if you would say. First, he is automatically king. Now we're going to have, what are we having now?
Declaration.
Declaration.
Yep.
And then we're going to have a coronation.
Which may be any time between now and end of next year.
Quite a length of time. But it's a really very interesting, very colorful enterprises. You've been looking at some processions on your screen, and very, very colorful indeed, if you would say. And as one would expect, various elements all across the kingdom are very much interested in how it's all evolving. It's like, we can't wait.
Don't forget that for many, this is going to be an event, the first in their lifetime, and maybe the only, because many have even come and gone and have never seen a coronation or a declaration in their lifetime, because the former monarch lived so long.
I'm wondering right now, so many people are just wondering how much different, for those who saw it, who saw the coronation 70 years ago.
Well, let's go and ask Grandpa, Grandma.
Only for those who saw it, how much difference, you know, it is between what now?
53, when there was no television coverage, live
television coverage. Some elements are still the same. One of the processions, I saw some seniors leaving the stage, so to speak, with spears in their hands. And I haven't seen anyone with guns, so there were no guns.
Well, what were the beefeaters carrying?
We're gonna have to wait and see, but this is really interesting. Very colorful.
Still no sign of the king yet.
Hey, it's not called a ceremony for nothing. It is a ceremony, most certainly. And you know what will be interesting to find out? Every element has some significant connotation. These 4 men on your screen right now, don't ask me what it means because I don't know, but you'll most certainly find out that they have some significance to the entire process.
You know, when he arrived from Scotland yesterday, and this shining Rolls Royce arrived to pick him up from Northolt, I thought, wow, this car must be at least 60 years old, and it's still shining.
You can just imagine for how long it's been. Well kept,
well polished,
protected. And you know, we're talking about engines there all the time. Those engines are still intact, built to last.
And the spare parts are still being made.
Those must have to be made. Oh, he's the king.
I'm sure that particular brand of Rolls Royce is the only one, and it was made specially for the Queen at the time.
Exactly. And you know, it's very interesting. Many may not know so many things about the monarchy in the United Kingdom. He is the head of state. He's also head of government. He's also head of the church.
And he's the largest landowner in the world. And he doesn't need a driver's license because driver's licenses are issued in his name. So he doesn't need one to drive.
Sounds like you're saying Jesus should pray in Jesus' name. Very, very.
And there is an ATM in Buckingham Palace just for the royal family.
Does he need money to buy anything?
Small change to tip, I suppose.
Okay.
Even that, I don't think he'll need to do that. His flunkies will do that.
Because since everything belongs to the king, I mean, you know.
True. What does he need cash for? And the cash is going to have his name, his head on it, but not his hair, his bust.
Okay. And it is also interesting, so many news channels are taking the news live all over the world. Right now, I'm counting so many taking this live now just to make sure that everyone in the world knows what's happening.
Well, it is a momentous occasion. And the importance of the United Kingdom to the world economy cannot be overstated. We all await the arrival of the king.
And I can just try to imagine what's happening behind the scenes now. I'm looking at a letter right now where the King, Philip VI, and Lady Letitia of Spain sent a letter, a message to King Charles III, congratulating him on the auspicious occasion of the proclamation of his ascension to the throne. He says, and I quote, "I wish to extend to your majesty on my behalf and on behalf of the Spanish government and people our sincere congratulations on this historic day with the vivid memory of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, your beloved mother, still in our hearts and minds. I would like to convey my best wishes to your Majesty for a fruitful and prosperous reign that will contribute for sure to the welfare of the British people and to the strengthening of the already very tight relations between our two countries and kingdoms. Queen Letizia and I would like to send your Majesty and the Queen Consort our personal affection, the assurances of our deep friendship." Signed, Philippe.
I mean, it just shows how safe those places are, those climes, where you can actually shake hands with a monarch or the equivalent of the president of a country, and you can get as close to him as to kiss him on the cheek.
Well, one other thing that has gone ahead of today is a good number of countries have their masks flying at half-mast.
Especially the Commonwealth countries.
Especially the Commonwealth countries. We also understand that there are administrative changes to come in the UK and Commonwealth following the death of Queen Elizabeth II. There are 15 countries in which Queen Elizabeth II was head of state will in different capacities gradually update signage to reflect King Charles III's ascension to the throne. I mentioned that earlier. The changes reflecting the new head of state will take years to update.
Stamps. Banknotes,
But
coins.
interestingly, current items featuring Queen Elizabeth II are not invalidated. So if you have those pounds and coins, still
You can
valid.
still use them, thankfully.
So that's some cheering news, I guess. One other change that has happened already. The UK national anthem has a tiny bit of adjustment.
God save the king.
God save the king. And wordings in passports will also in time be updated. So the ones that read a Britannic Majesty's Secretary of State, you can just guess what that will become.
I mean, people have said God save the Queen for so long that it's going to take some adjusting.
Well, it's right when some people say this is going to take years to update. So
yeah, God save the Queen. God save the Queen. Suddenly, from yesterday, from the day before yesterday.
So all QCs.
Cases.
Queen's Counsel will now have to become
King's Counsel.
So many changes to adapt to.
Oh. On Her Majesty's Secret Service will become His Majesty's Secret Service.
What's going to happen to King James? No, beg your pardon, no. What's going to happen to James Bond?
Well, it was shot when the Queen was in.
That's what I read.
When the Queen reigned. You'll have to explain that.
James Bond always carried the Queen's, Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Because he was working for Her Majesty. So any new Bond film that will be shot from now on, he will be working for His Majesty. And he will probably go on His Majesty's secret mission.
Well, you heard the horns blare the other time. I guess it is, as we said, getting closer. There's so much to learn from this procession. It's a ceremony, and it is a very colorful one. We also understand that King James's face will appear on newly minted coins from next year, 2023. They will use an effigy supplied by the UK Royal Mint, as is consistent with past practice. I'm still awed by the significance of every uniformed phases of people that we have seen in this procession so far.
Historians are probably busy now, taking notes regarding the change of the guards.
It's a very momentous occasion, where the Bar Council in the UK put out a statement on Twitter that says this: the officers, members and staff of the General Council of the Bar of England and Wales join with colleagues across the legal professions in mourning the loss of our country's most devoted public servant. Throughout a long, loyal and steadfast reign, Queen Elizabeth II embodied the symbolic role of the figure in whose name justice is carried out with great integrity. I have written to offer our deep and sincere condolences to His Majesty the King, and our thoughts are with the royal family at this time. It was signed by Mark Fennells, KC, Chair of the Bar. See, they started. KC.
KC indeed. No,
Yeah.
he's no longer a QC.
So when someone asked a question, I assume we change immediately to KC, and the Bar Council responded via a Twitter thread: we have been advised by the Crown Office that the title Queen's Council changes to King's Council, KC, with immediate effect. The change is automatic, so there are no new letters patent.
I recall some of our lawyers who went to school, studied law over there, and they say with such pride that barrister so-and-so and so, QC. Do they remain QCs because they were called to the bar at the time that the Queen reigned?
And someone interestingly, someone asked, so will females be KFCs? Asking for a friend. And another says, were males previously QMCs? No? So I guess that continues. Interesting, solemn, beautiful, colorful, important ceremony ongoing right now. And so many people are waiting to just see. We've seen representation of the bar. We're looking at representations of
the church as well. It's going to continue for quite a while, as Anara has said, until a number of these will continue to be blow by blow as the event continues until it is over. So you can stick with Channels Television for more for the rest of it.